Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
And now, please welcome at this time your hosts, Graham GSM Matthews and RJ Marceau.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WrestleRant Radio here today for February 13th, 2025. We are live here on YouTube. Hope you guys can join us here as we break down all the latest WWE and NXT, AEW releases. Speaking of NXT, we'll be getting into the Vengeance Day predictions coming up for this weekend as well on Sunday. Talking a little bit about Raw this past week, how it kind of affected the WrestleMania card, and so much more. Ricky Starks showing up in NXT so soon after his AEW release. A lot to get into here today, but my most important question for Mr. Marceau, who is joining me. Brother, what did you think of the Super Bowl?
Oh, terrible game.
Terrible.
I mean, you must have probably shut it off at halftime after the beatdown that was going down. It just wasn't a good. I mean, I don't really cared who won regardless, but as a football fan, it was a terrible game.
So it's funny you say that because I was watching the game. I thought the same thing. It was not competitive at all. The Chiefs did end up getting a bunch of touchdowns in the second half. Did they score at all before halftime? I don't think they did.
No,
right?
They were down 20. I think it was 28-0 at half.
Yeah, it was pretty embarrassing. So they ended up scoring in the second half. It did get a bit better. It's funny you say that. I think Dylan said he enjoyed the game, so I'm interested to get your perspective. Where did the Chiefs go wrong? I mean, Dylan had said, he had told me, he's obviously a big football guy as well, that it wasn't too much of a surprise because the Eagles' offense, he might be listening now, so he can correct me if I'm wrong from what he told me. He said the Eagles' offense has just been better all season, so it really should not have been a surprise that it was a blowout. Would you agree with that? Were you expecting that going into Sunday?
I mean, I think their defense would be pretty good, but I didn't expect them to be as dominant as they were. I mean, it wasn't like they steamrolled everyone in the playoffs. They lost multiple games throughout the season, but I mean, the Chiefs just couldn't block. I don't know. It was, like I said, if you wanted the Chiefs to lose, I guess you would categorize that as a good game. But as a fan of neither team, I thought it was terrible. Like, if I wasn't at the party I was at to watch the game, I probably would have just went home and went to bed at halftime.
Was it at least salvaged by the halftime show for you at all? Did you enjoy the Kendrick Lamar halftime show?
I could care. I did not. I'm not a big Kendrick guy. It was whatever. I only knew 2 songs, so I was kind of just whatever.
Are you a Drake guy, or are you just not into that genre at all?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like a Drake guy either. I mean, I think he has decent music, but I'm not like a diehard regardless. So, I mean, honestly, I wasn't really sure of the whole spat to begin with.
Yeah.
People were bringing that up, and I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm not that big into either of them. I would say I'm casual on both of them.
Funny you mentioned that Alexis actually going into the game. She had told me yesterday, first of all, specifically not to bury her if I don't have to. So I'm going to try to make a conscious effort not to bury her here on the show as she's listening. She is joining in live in the chat saying hi. So thanks for tuning in. I'm not going to bury you here, Alexis, but she did bring up after the game on Monday. She was not aware of the Drake-Kendrick beef that you were talking about just there. I was somewhat familiar with it, but she wasn't really aware at all. But I guess it blew up again on TikTok and stuff coming out of the game because there were a lot of, little Easter eggs from Kendrick as far as the shit that he was saying about Drake. So, I mean, I guess if you're aware of that stuff, you enjoyed it. But even if not, I probably know 2 Kendrick songs. I only know maybe one of the ones that he sang on Sunday, but I thought visually it looked cool, so I thought that was nice. If you had the pencil, though, Mr. Marceau, who would you put in charge of the halftime show for next year? Who would you like to see play at halftime?
That's a great question. It has to be someone really big. I do like Kendrick, and I think he's decent, but I feel like it's just very niche-y. I don't know. It's tough to say because it's there's not really one person for everyone. Like, I thought Usher would be really good, and I thought his performance was underwhelming last year. I feel like everyone knows Usher, and I definitely wouldn't want to repeat. I feel like Beyonce's done it a few times, so I definitely wouldn't want her to do it again. I'm trying to think. It's a great question, though. Like, Bruno Mars, I feel like, has done it a few times. I don't even know if he's still relevant at this point.
Yeah, The Weeknd's done it
I don't
before.
know.
He did it
Like,
a couple years
I
ago.
just feel like they've done more, like, poppy hip-hop, like, rap lately.
No T Swift?
No, I don't think Taylor. I'm just honestly surprised that Drake had never done it. And then obviously the whole Kendrick thing, people are like, well, he'll never do it. But that is a good question, though. I'm trying to think. Like, country, I feel like there's some big country artists, but I feel like they just wouldn't go in that direction. I feel like, I don't know, they just probably wouldn't. But I don't know. I'll just say Morgan Wallen and give you a name.
Okay.
He's a country artist, and I feel like he's pretty big. So I feel like I'd say him. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar to, like, the hip-hop rap genre.
I'm surprised there wasn't someone like a Jelly Roll who's kind of popular right now and has been popular for the last couple of years. Maybe, I don't know if he would do it next year, but I'm surprised they didn't ask him to do it.
Yeah, I would say he's pretty big, too, Jelly Roll. Yeah, I mean, maybe Post Malone. Post Malone would be pretty cool, too.
Has he not done it?
No, he has not.
Post Malone's never done the Super Bowl.
Halftime, though. I think
he
he may have, like, done, like, a quick cameo, but he was never, like, the headliner.
Actually, no, I take that back. He has done the Super Bowl because I remember one of the games in recent years where I think he sang the national anthem, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago he sang the national anthem.
Yeah.
But still, he hasn't done, like, a halftime show, I guess the best way to put it.
Alexis told me to not bury her in the. Well, she didn't tell me to not bury her, but she said stop it in the chat. I'm actually not burying her. I'm just saying that she wasn't aware of the beef, and I'm not using that as a reason to bury her. I'm just telling her. I'm using that as a reference point as to. I also was not entirely. What'd you say?
I said I don't know. I didn't really know the beef either, so I'm right there with you, Alexis.
There you go. But she did say in the chat as well, I'm surprised you did not say this name unless she's already done it. Ariana Grande. That was Alexis's idea.
Ari, I mean, she is in the mainstream a little bit right now with the whole Wicked stuff. So, I mean, I don't hate that. I mean, I think that's a good option. I guess I just totally blew past my mind. But yeah, she's probably big enough she could do it.
All right. Well, that being said, even though the Super Bowl may have underwhelmed on Sunday, I'm sure your sights are set on this weekend. Yeah, we got Vengeance Day on Sunday. We're going to get to that a little bit later on. But isn't the Indy 500 this Saturday?
Geez, Sam.
What?
Daytona 500.
Why did they say? Why did they say Indy? I did say 500. I just got the name of the city wrong. Yeah, Daytona 500 coming up on Saturday. What are we thinking? Are you excited for it?
Sunday, not Saturday.
Oh, remember that one time I think Gunther used the wrong pay-per-view name, or Drew did, or something a couple of years ago, because pay-per-views used to be on Sunday. I'm getting my shit wrong. Don't listen to me to hype shit up, because you're going to get it all wrong. How are we excited for this event coming up on Sunday, Daytona 500?
Yeah, I'm excited. I watched practice yesterday morning, and qualifying was last night, so I'm excited. I mean, it's always great. I will say it is weird. They started off like the first race of the year is like the biggest one. I don't know. That's like starting like the season with the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of bizarre, but I don't know. I guess it gets like all the pageantry and everyone excited to kind of get into the season. So it should be fun. Hopefully it doesn't rain. I mean, it usually rains every year and ruins it. So hopefully it doesn't rain. But if it does, I have Monday off for President's Day, so I can still watch if needed.
Not bad. Have you ever been to a Daytona 500 yet, or no?
I have not. No, I that's on the bucket list.
Wow. Okay. All right. Very nice. Is Ryan Preece racing this weekend, or if he is, he's probably not going to do well?
Yeah, he's going to be in the Daytona 500.
Do you think he's going to do well?
At Daytona, honestly, anyone can win.
Okay.
Or be good. It's like a drafting track, so I mean, you just kind of have to avoid the wrecks. I mean, he could, depending. I mean, he's in a fast car. I think he could do well if he doesn't crash out.
Well, that's the bias pick, but I might go with Joey Logano or Kyle Busch. They're always my top two picks. The only two names I know.
Now you know Ryan Preece.
Well, Ryan Preece as well, but I feel like the last couple of years.
Another NASCAR driver. Come on.
Well, aside from Joey Logano and Kyle Busch,
Yep.
Wasn't there not Ari Emanuel? That's the guy that's in charge of TKO. Ari Arola, what's his name?
Eric Almirola. He retired like 3 years ago.
Ah, fuck. So he's not coming out of retirement for the Daytona 500.
No. Do you know like Jimmy Johnson?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think of people that we've talked about. I don't think I know Jimmy Johnson. Who's another main one that I should know about?
Like Chase Elliott.
Okay, I know Chase Elliott. The Chase Elliott name sounds familiar.
There you go. Okay.
Should I put money on Chase Elliott?
It's a tough race to bet, just like I said, because anyone can win. It's probably one of the hardest races to bet.
Yeah.
I mean, because like I said, I think they said the last 8. I think they said last night. I think it was like the last 8 times, because they race at Daytona twice a year. Only the first race is the Daytona 500. The next time they race there, it's only 400 miles.
Okay.
But they said the last 8 times they've been there, there's been 8 different winners. So it's kind of hard to predict.
That's crazy. Yeah, I remember watching it 5 years ago. So Alexis actually also chimed in and said, racing is fun to watch. She also said, my dad's been before. He says it's very fun. So, hey, if Mike says it's fun to attend, obviously you know it's fun to attend, but you just haven't done it yet. But if Mike says so, then it must be fact. Justin also chatting in saying, hi, guys. Thank you for joining us, Justin. As we're live here and you're watching live or watching after the fact, be sure to hit a thumbs up, hit the bell button as well to be notified every single time we go live here on the channel, talking Super Bowl, talking Daytona 500, coming up on Sunday. I'm getting my shit right now. But now we transition back into the wrestling talk here. WWE and AEW releases. News isn't exactly fresh. I mean, this did happen last Friday. But I want to talk a little bit about the WWE releases. There were 12 releases in total from last weekend, not even just last Friday. I'm trying to pull up the list here as we're talking. But there were 12 releases total. Honestly, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that any of these really shocked me, but some were more disappointing than others. So we're going to get into those here now. Authors of Pain and Paul Ellering now gone from WWE. Final Testament is no more. Karrion Kross and Scarlett are now on their own. Sonya Deville, Blair Davenport, Cedric Alexander, Isla Dawn, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, collectively known as the OC. No AJ Styles, obviously, thankfully. But Anderson and Gallows are indeed gone. Duke Hudson was cut, I think, in January, but I'm including his name here because he was among the releases. Elektra Lopez and Giovanni Vinci. So of those 12 names, Mr. Marceau, that I just rattled off, and we'll get into each one and where they went wrong and if there was anything that could have been done to salvage these people's careers in WWE. Do any of these people's releases really surprise you, or could you have seen these coming a mile in advance?
I would say the only one that surprised me was Sonya, just because they were featuring her so much on television. Obviously, the whole Pure Fusion Collective stuff wasn't working out. So when I did see that she was released, not that I wasn't, surprised, but, it was more like, okay, that wasn't working, but they've also been featuring her a ton on TV. Like, those other people that you listed, none of them have really been on TV at all. I mean, Authors of Pain and Ellering, I don't know. I feel like that really didn't work out either. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like Sonya was probably the one that stuck out the most. It was surprising, but it wasn't. Surprising, but, I mean, it wasn't really working. She really, I mean, she was, her best time in the company was probably as the GM on Raw or SmackDown. I can't remember which show, but as the GM. And then, obviously, she came back. But I don't know. She just, never really got her footing back in the ring. I don't know. So that one was surprising just because they pushed her so much. But all the other names you listed, they're barely on TV. Or, I mean, with Isla Dawn, I was glad Alba Fire. I'm hoping that kind of opens the door for her to kind of get a push on her own now. But I feel with her, she was pretty much a tag team person, or they probably just didn't see a singles future for her. And then Vinci, I mean, he was on SmackDown twice, got beat both times, and we never saw him again. I mean, I don't know. That was kind of... I feel like they also had him pigeonholed for a long time in a certain role, so I feel like they only saw him a certain way, and he was never going to get out of that, unfortunately. Yeah. Cedric, I feel like he was just... he was there so long. It was kind of like Gallows and Anderson. They're never on TV. They just weren't... They were what they were, and they just moved on. Blair Davenport, I feel like she was on TV recently. I guess just didn't work out, and... Yeah, I mean, like I said, none of them really surprised me, but... the Sony one definitely stuck out.
Yeah, I mean, especially since, like you mentioned, she had just been there for so long. I mean, she's been with that company for a decade. She joined when the Tough Enough season happened back in 2015. I don't know if they hired her right after the show ended or a couple of months later, but that show aired, that season of Tough Enough aired a decade ago. So it's been that long that she's been basically with the company on and off as the GM. I would say, I know you mentioned the best stint that she had with the company was as the GM. She did excel in that role. I think it was alongside Adam Pearce on SmackDown, I believe, but she may have done Raw as well. I would actually argue against that point. Would you say instead that her best period was the feud that she had with Mandy Rose? Because I feel like that was really where it felt like she was a breakout star, and it kind of felt like she was ready for that next level. Then the whole stalker thing happened right before the match with Mandy at SummerSlam, and she took time off for a couple of months, which was obviously for the best. But I'm just saying, like, that stalled her momentum, and it wasn't her fault they didn't pick right back up where she came back. I mean, when she came back, she wasn't ready to get back in the ring, I don't believe, so they put her in the GM role instead. But that kind of felt like during that Mandy Rose feud early on in the days of the pandemic, it really felt like, okay, they have a new top heel on their hands, because Sonya and Mandy had been joined to the hip as part of Absolution and stuff like that for years. In NXT, she wasn't really doing much, and it kind of really felt like they had something in Sonya. Then they made her a GM, and then after that ran its course, which went on for a little long, and the whole feud with Naomi also went well. Didn't really seem like they had anything for her. She got hurt about a year later, comes back, PFC, falls flat on its face. But do you think that Sonya could have ever been, like, I know it was surprising to a certain extent, like you said, but do you think Sonya could have ever been in that upper echelon of women as a future main women's world champion, or do you think she could have been more utilized at the mid-card level, or can you see why they probably let her go?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of said there with the Mandy Rose thing. I think that was kind of like her start to be like kind of like breaking out, or like kind of like starting to get like over a little bit. And then obviously what happened after happened. But yeah, I mean, I will say like one thing. I mean, I wouldn't say she was like amazing or like overly appealing in the ring. So maybe I feel like that's kind of probably what set her back. I wouldn't say like she was not. I wouldn't say she was good, but I would say she was average at best. And then she really never really, besides the Mandy feud, she really never had like a connection with the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's the point. And like, especially with this whole Pure Fusion Collective, she's like the leader, and they tried so hard and it just never worked. So I think it was one of those things they just thought like, hey, it's just clearly just not going to work. So we might as well just move on now. But I think if the things that didn't happen after the Mandy stuff, I think she probably could have been like lower mid card. And then depending on how she could have got over it, maybe like I said, prop her up a little bit. But I mean, I think at this point they just see her as a low mid-card woman that just can't get over.
Yeah, I mean, she was over at one point, but that PFC stuff just was not working. I mean, we joked, I think last week here on the show, at least the best part of PFC's role in the Rumble this year was the fact that they were eliminated all together and at once, and they didn't drag it out. They did put some heat on them. I think they eliminated at least one or two people, I think, before they all got chucked out simultaneously in the middle of the match. And listen, I like Shayna Baszler. I like Zoe Stark. I think they're good. The group itself just did not work. You would think they would instead pivot and utilize Sonya in a different direction, or at least have them turn on Sonya before they fired her that Friday. Obviously, that didn't happen. So, I mean, I can't say that I can't sit here and say I ever really saw Sonya, even before PFC, being a real contender for any of the main women's world championships. The mid-card belts, maybe like you said, at the lower mid-card level. But like with all the women that we have currently in WWE and also waiting in the wings in NXT, there's just a lot more women that are better than her. And I've said before, no disrespect, but it kind of felt like when she came back from injury, whether it be the injury or for whatever reason, it felt like she regressed in the ring. It kind of felt like she digressed a little bit. She was regressing in the ring to the point where she's had all these matches on TV. One, the act wasn't really working, and two, she wasn't really having great matches. So, I mean, I'm not saying, that she wasn't worth keeping around. I think she was. But she at least was there for a decade, which you can't say for a lot of the other people on this list that we're going to get into in a second. Justin did say, I think Gallows and Anderson will be back in 1 year because they always find themselves back. We'll get into them in a moment, but honestly, the way that they fall upward, they always land on their feet, and they always seem to make more money than they were previously, is astonishing to me, considering their talent level has not been what it was as a team in like a fucking decade. But I guess we'll see. Wrestling Fan 13 also chatting in. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. He said, hope all is well. He also had said, I could see Sonya excelling in a TNA or a Bloodsport. Bloodsport being the MMA offshoot of GCW, I believe. So yeah, I could see her doing well, doing something over there. I think Sonya Deville in like a TNA would honestly be a perfect fit. And now that TNA works with WWE, she could always work her way back into the company at some point down the road, whether that's the intent or not. But I mentioned Sonya at least had a chance to kind of get over and find success in the last decade in WWE. Blair Davenport did not. She was called up a year ago, clearly with no plan. This woman had all of 5 fucking televised matches before they let her go. She was called up. They did nothing with her for 3 months. She was around during the summer. She had those mini matches, that mini feud with Naomi, that series of matches with Naomi. Never won a single one to my knowledge, but she was around for that. She then disappeared from the show, resurfaced for the most recent Women's United States Championship tournament, lost in the first round, I believe got pinned, disappeared again. I think she was supposed to be in the Women's Rumble, and it was said that her spot was given up to Nikki Bella, which makes sense. Nikki Bella's a bigger name. And then she gets fired on Friday of the following week. So, the Sonya one, I'm not saying I understand, but the Blair Davenport one, they didn't even try. And I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that she was the next Bianca Belair or Rhea Ripley, but she was barely there before they let her go. I mean, I feel like she could have at least been utilized at the women's mid-card level. We're getting all these matches between Meechin and Chelsea Green. That could have been a spot for Blair Davenport. So your thoughts on Blair Davenport's departure as far as what you think they could have done differently there?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty surprised when I saw her on the list a little bit. Like I said, she got called up in the fall, like going into winter, and I mean, I think she was good. I mean, I don't think she was great, and like I said, they called her up, and they really didn't have any direction for her. Never really won a match, and I'm not quite sure exactly what their plan was, and maybe they just didn't have one. They knew she was never going to win anything in NXT, so they just called her up, and. It is like, I feel like it is at the end of the day one of those things that they just have so many talented women that gets to the point that they have these people sitting around and they're like, okay, if we're going to get rid of people, we got to start like getting rid of people we don't see anything like that we're going to do with them. And unfortunately, clearly that's what they thought about her. But I mean, they have so many women, like you said, coming up and that are already on the roster they're not really utilizing, who I think are probably better than her. So it's one of those things they have. So the women's division just in the main roster and NXT, they're so deep that like I wouldn't be surprised coming up. Obviously, she was one of the same with Sonya, but I wouldn't be surprised if within the next year or two they do move on from more and more, just because they do have so many in the pipeline and so many that they're not currently utilizing.
Well, you would think at least they would give her more of a chance. I mean, I said this the other day with Blair Davenport. Someone had said, well, you need people on the main roster to lose. Maybe that was her role in being called up. I understand that. Like, when I say call people up with a plan, I'm not saying call them up with a push. I mean, unless they really deserve it or need it. I'm not saying she needed to be pushed on the main roster, but they didn't even keep her around to do jobs. Like Sonya Deville, before she got fired, was at least around to do jobs to people before she got canned last weekend. Blair Davenport didn't even really have that opportunity. She was around for 5 matches, and yeah, she wasn't really getting over because they didn't put her in a position to get over. But, they fired her within a year, so you look back at people, and it's kind of a different situation, but also somewhat similar. Dijak, Baron Corbin. I mean, they called these people back up to the main roster with literally no plan to do anything with them. And again, not just to lose. Dijak was called back to the main roster just to get let go, just to not have his contract renewed. And Baron Corbin was barely utilized. So again, it's one thing if you call them up to be a jobber or something, which you do need on the shows. I agree with that. But it's like they weren't even on the shows. So, I mean, can we go back to the the mindset of only call people up when you have a plan? Or I thought the days of that happening were dead under Vince, but I guess not. So what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, not everyone's going to have a direction, I guess you could say, too. It's like not everyone's going to get pushed. And like you said, I mean, obviously she didn't have like a long run, but I mean, I'm not sure. I'm like, maybe she was used on house shows more than we know of. I'm not quite sure exactly what they used her as, but like, I think that's one thing people do get caught up in the relationship. Like, oh, they could have used them so much like that. You could say that about anyone, though. Like, there's plenty of people that are still in a contract that could be utilizing better, but like, there's only a certain amount of spots for a certain amount of people. So, I mean, I understand that she didn't really get a chance compared to pretty much everyone else on this list, but I mean, at the end of the day, I guess they just didn't. They said, I don't think they saw her winning anything in NXT, so they're like, might as well just call her up. And then they just didn't utilize her, and then when push came to shove, she was just on the list of people they're going to get rid of. But, I mean, it's just like, it is what it is, as the best way to describe it, I think.
Yeah, no, it's not even like, I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that she should have been utilized better, which is implied, but like to even just be utilized at all. I mean, they have 5 matches in a year. Like you said, maybe she was utilized on house shows, so I'm not going to say it's entirely inaccurate. You would just think they would have had her on TV more, doing a little bit more, just to put people over at the very least. And they didn't even really do that. I mean, I feel like they have enough women for a role like that, so to call her up just to do that didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And they weren't even going to use her for that designated purpose of putting people over. Wrestling Fan 13 said, while Sonya did not light the world on fire in the ring, I enjoyed her mic work, honestly. He had also said, as for Blair, maybe she goes to Rev Pro or Stardom. I think she came from Stardom, so I could see her going back there. That would totally make sense. Justin said, Gallows has been fired by WWE 3 times now. Yeah, he was fired under Festus 15 years ago, fired again 5 years ago, and then now fired in 2025. So he's been fired 3 times now by WWE. Let's talk about them. Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. I think a lot of people forgot they were even still employed. They've largely been relegated since they came back to the company in late 2022 alongside AJ Styles, who was already there, but they reunited with Styles. They've largely been relegated to NXT in the last year, which that was a fine fit for them. They put over some teams. They weren't doing shit on the main roster. WWE would, if AJ Styles was not on the show, you would not see them on the show. They were not around if AJ Styles was not around. So the fact they got cut again doesn't really shock me. I think they were honestly only really brought back as a make good because Triple H reportedly promised them, many years ago, oh yeah, we'll re-sign you to big money. And then Vince ended up cutting them anyway, and AJ Styles got pissed at Paul Heyman for it. Can't get pissed at Paul Heyman for it now. Can't get pissed at Vince McMahon now. You got to be pissed at Triple H. So maybe this one's a little less surprising, and this one doesn't sting as much for Styles, but Gallows Anderson, now gone from WWE. Is this at all a shock to you, Mr. Marceau? What were your thoughts on their latest run in WWE?
I wasn't surprised at all. Like you said, I think this was more of a make good for them getting fired after they just re-signed. The last time they were with the company. I think they were a good team a couple of years ago at this point. They're just like a good veteran hand, I guess. I think Anderson's pretty good. Gallows at this point, I wouldn't say he's like his work's the greatest right now, but yeah. They're never on TV. When I saw the list, I saw it and just was like, no, I'm not surprised at all. I think they're just one of those older teams. They're decent hands in the ring, but I think them getting brought back was just because Triple H felt bad that he told them that they're going to re-sign and make all this money, and then right after they re-signed, they got cut a couple months later. But besides, without being with AJ, they did nothing. And even when they were in AEW, I never really cared for them. I just feel like, I don't know, they're a decent team, but I wasn't surprised they got released there.
So he felt bad enough to bring them back, but didn't feel bad enough to attempt to push them in any real capacity.
Correct.
I guess not. He didn't even do shit with them when they first came back. They had the feud of the Judgment Day, which I think they lost. And then after that, that was it. They disappeared from the show, and they were barely on the show after that. So, you can't even say oh yeah, at least they tried. I'm not going to sit here and, cry over these two not being pushed. But it's what was even the point of bringing them back aside from just making it up to them? You know what I mean? This
making
really
good on a contract. They got paid. That's kind of how I see it.
Well, to be fair, two things though. Correct, I agree with that. But one, Carl Anderson was injured, which is why they have not been on NXT. So I think to cut him while he's still seemingly hurt is still pretty shitty. And two, why not just wait until their deals are up? We don't know when their deals are up exactly. That could have been later this year if they signed 3-year deals. I think honestly, another top takeaway that I had with these people, what would be nice under Triple H, that we have seen more of, to be fair, Sonya Deville, to be clear from earlier, she's not yet released. They're just not renewing her contract. So I don't know if she's a free agent now or she will be in a week or two very soon. I would like to see them see more contracts through as opposed to signing people and then just cutting them halfway through. Again, I don't know how long they signed for, but is that something that you would like to see WWE do more of? I know it's a company, it's a business. You got to let people go. We don't know the whole story, but it would be nice if they actually saw these deals through and then let them go as opposed to being oh yeah, we'll re-sign you for 5 years. Okay, it's not working a year in. We're going to fire you. I just don't really understand that mindset.
It's a business mindset. I don't see a problem with it. I know wrestling fans get all butthurt that people get re-signed and then they get fired a couple of years later. But you sign a 3-year contract. If it's not working out after a year and a half, why would you hold on to you're making money? The whole point's making money and the revenue and the bottom line. They sign you for 5 years and after 2 years it's not working out. Why would they pay you for 3 more years? I don't know. I understand, but it's a cutthroat business. It is what it is. And if it was ideal, they could just let people go. Yeah, but like I said, imagine you're paying someone $200,000 a year for 5 years, and then you get to the second year and they're just not over and it's not working out. So you're just gonna pay them $600,000 the next 3 years because you feel bad. It is a business, unfortunately, and I mean, they're in the business of making money, so when you look at some of these people, you said depending on how much they're making, and if they're not being utilized at that potential, then you kind of got to move on, unfortunately.
No, I mean, I understand that mindset, but I'm just at the same time, you mentioned like not having to pay them $600,000 for the next like couple of years. Why have them sign 5-year deals in the first place? I think Justin said in the chat they did sign 5-year. Nick also joining us. Thank you, Nick, for joining us. I hope you're doing well. I'll get to Wrestling Fan 13's comment in a second. But like, why sign them for 5 years? It's not like they're real competition AEW. I mean, why not sign them for a 3-year deal? Because they would have been up. That would have been up this year.
Yeah, but it's like no different than a sports contract. They sign people for longer contracts. And like I said, like after a year or two, they're like, shit, we got to get out of this, and they release someone. It's the same. It's the same kind of. It's the same thing.
It is. Yeah.
They're
No,
like
it is.
saying, Graham, we're gonna give you a 5-year contract worth $100 million, and they're 2 years in, they're like, fuck, we're losing money or something's not working, so they just get rid of you. Like, there is a contract there, but they already like it's. I don't know. It's like a sporting. I don't know. Like I said, I feel like it's a sporting contract. Like. Sometimes they sign people they think you're going to be greater than you are. Like, they think there's bigger potential, and it doesn't work out, and they move on from you.
So really, I mean, the top takeaway there is it only really, I mean, not just WWE, but any sports organization, any company that you work for, really, it protects them. It doesn't really protect you. It guarantees that you're going to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like, if you want to leave, they're like, no, you signed a 5-year deal. You're not fucking quitting. But, like, if they want to get rid of you,
there's, like, sometimes, like, especially in sports, sometimes, like, they'll give you, like, a 3-year deal, but, like, there's options, like, each year. So, like, you can opt out after the first year if you want. So, like, if you were getting paid $40 million a year on a, like, so it's 3 years, $120 million, just to say, so you make it $40 million a year. If you get hurt your first year, you're clearly going to opt in again, because if you left, you're not going to make $40 million again because you're hurt.
Yeah.
So, like, there is, like, but if the team has an option and you're making 3 years, $120 million, and you're hurt after $40 million, they might let you go because they're like, you're going to be hurt and you're not going to be worth $40 million. So, like,
yeah.
I don't know, like, there is different things, like you said. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in sports specifically, I mean, it's ridiculous. They sign people to 15-year deals for, like, what, fucking $500 million or some shit?
Yeah, but a lot of that money is also guaranteed.
Yeah, that's true. At least they're getting paid that amount of money. Wrestling Fan 13 had said, I think under TKO, Mark Shapiro and Ari look at these cuts as actual budget cuts. I think they assess who is not being used on a consistent basis on TV and even out the books financially, although these cuts are unfortunate regardless. I truly hope everyone lands on their feet, and I'm sure they will. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. That's another thing I do want to mention here to kind of play, devil's advocate, pros, cons. I'm not saying anyone should get fired and whatever. I'm just saying that you look at these names, none of these people were really, even if they were on TV consistently, they weren't fucking doing anything. We don't know how much money they were signed for, but I think, like you said, Wrestling Fan, TKO and those guys, I think they see it as, okay, we could save some money. They're absolutely budget cuts. I mean, as it is with any company. I mean, they're making more money hand over fist than ever before, so it's not really budget cuts, so to speak. But if they feel like they could save some money here, pay that money to some incoming free agents and whatever, then that's how they're going to look at it. Why would you pay AOP just to be background players? Did they not know that when they brought them back a couple of years ago? I guess not, but I mean, do you kind of share that same mindset, Mr. Marceau, of they legitimately do look at these as budget cuts? And it's not the same thing as a couple of years ago when they were letting people go like Karrion Kross, and when he was really, like, when he had first just got called up, Swerve and Keith Lee. Like, those were just fucking ridiculous. Those were people that should not have been cut at all, that they had barely even tried with. A lot of these people had either been there or they were lower up on the card.
No, yeah, I think a lot of these people are either talent that are returning, that were low card anyways, and then, like you said, just some people that, besides like Davenport, I feel like other people that were in the lower mid card anyways that they weren't really utilizing. So like you said, you're looking at it, hey, yes, we're making a ton of money, but hey, we could be making even more money. Or like you said, taking those funds and allocating it to something else. We, like I said, bringing in new people, or maybe just like taking them, like I said, marketing, or just taking the money and putting it somewhere else. So like, I feel like I said, it's not too surprising because like I said, most of these people, they're not like big time players. With Swerve and like Andrade and like all those guys are pretty much mid card back then. Like that didn't really even get a chance. Like they cut all these people just because like they just didn't want to, like it was like a Vince thing. I don't know. Like the fact that they had those people and they cut them just because was kind of hindsight looking back at it. I mean, not like they all really turned out to be something, but like it would be great to still have Swerve, I feel like, but he just wasn't in Vince's plans, I guess.
Yeah, no, Swerve was the one they really let go. I mean, especially since they brought Karrion Kross back. Keith Lee's had some health issues, but Swerve was really like the one they let slip through their fingers by letting go, who went on to become a big star in AEW. Justin had said, how much money do you guys think is being saved by all 12 cuts? That's a good question. I mean, obviously, I had heard there were more cuts, like office cuts, and obviously they weren't being paid the same amount that these wrestlers were. I would say a few million, because honestly, I don't know if they would have re-signed Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows for anything less than like $500,000 just to do absolutely nothing, but I do think they pay them a lot of money to come back. How much money do you think they saved? Of these 12 cuts, how much money do you think they saved, or, whatever, by cutting these people?
I would say a couple million. You're gonna feel like you were close. I mean, if you just take each person making 100,000, which I think, like you said, I think Gallows and Anderson were making well more than that. I mean, that would be 1.2 million alone.
Yeah.
So I would say a couple, like 2.5, 3 million, if I was taking a somewhat educated guess.
Yeah, probably up on the higher end, because I had seen somewhere, and Meltzer's, not always accurate, so take that with a grain of salt. But I think he had said at one point that the baseline for the main roster was like 300,000. Like NXT was at least 100, a little less than 100. If you're a bigger star, then probably over 100. But if you're on the main roster, I think it's closer to 300,000, I believe, for like the lowest, like a fucking Akira Tozawa's getting that, let alone people that are higher up on the card, like a Anderson and Gallows, so they brought back for probably a lot more money than that. So yeah, I would say probably around 3-ish million. Cedric Alexander was another name, a lot like Gallows and Anderson, who has been there for Gallows and Anderson came back in 2022. Alexander, I relate to them in that you probably forgot he was even still there until you heard the name last Friday. Unless you was specifically watching NXT, he was on the show a couple of weeks ago. I think Alexander is great. He's very talented. He was awesome on 205 Live, great Cruiserweight Championship reign. He was great in the Hurt Business. Beyond those two stints, which were very short-lived, they had no idea what to do with him. He didn't really fit into WWE's plans. Even when Triple H took over, I feel like he was at a place where he's only ever going to be an enhancement talent, and there's other people we could focus on. Putting him back in NXT was great. He had a fun little NXT run the last 6-7 months. But again, I look at this as he was a main roster guy that they were paying most likely main roster money. Baron Corbin talked about this. They were definitely paying him main roster money to work, twice a month in Florida? That, to them, on the books, makes no sense. That's why they let go of Baron Corbin and Dijak. And those people went back to the main roster. But usually when they look for cuts, Mustafa Ali, Dana Brooke, they would cut these people first because they're making main roster money to do very little in NXT, and they might not see the return on their investment. So I can't say I'm shocked by this, and hopefully he goes on to do, I would say the Hurt Syndicate. I feel like that makes the most sense. You put him back with them in AEW. But yeah, does this one also really surprise you? What's your overall assessment of Alexander's time in WWE?
Yeah, not surprising here either. I feel like you kind of clump him and Vinci kind of in a similar category. Like they both saw their big success with a group. They were great on 205 Live. They're kind of categorized in like that cruiserweight, smaller guy kind of frame. I feel like that's kind of happened with Vinci too, and like with Alexander. Once they broke off from their two groups they were in, it kind of seemed like they really didn't have any plans for them. They both were kind of enhanced with talent. Same with Vinci. Like he went back down to NXT, really didn't do a ton. So when I saw his name as well as Vinci, I kind of was like, I kind of saw this coming.
Yeah, especially with Vinci. I mean, Vinci even more so. Alexander at least was on NXT TV, and, they were doing some stuff with him. He's been there for a long time. He signed 9 years ago. 8.5 years ago, Alexander was signed. Giovanni Vinci has also been there for a while. I'm not going to say they just hired him last year. He has been there, I believe, since 2016, which is also, he was also in the Cruiserweight Classic with Cedric Alexander. Did not win. I think he didn't even make it past the first round, but they utilized him in Imperium, and he was great there. And then they kind of put him in NXT very briefly on his own before they put him back with Imperium after Vince left, which was the best thing for him. And then he was very abruptly kicked out of Imperium, and then he did nothing. And then they brought him to SmackDown to repackage him, and they put effort into those vignettes, making you think, okay, he's going to be a mid-card guy. I know Nick, leading up to his debut, him and I were talking, and we were kind of excited to see what they would do with him. And then he loses to Apollo Crews in like 5 fucking seconds. And then they have a rematch, and then he loses that too. And then we have not, again, it would be one thing if he's on the show losing every week. He would probably still be fired anyway. The guy lost 2 matches and never bounced back. He was never on the show. I think I saw him in one backstage segment being punked out by Cody Rhodes, or he was talking to Carmelo Hayes or whatever it was. That was months ago. He has not been on the show since. I ask you, Mr. Marceau, who the fuck did Giovanni Vinci piss off to get this treatment? This felt like a premeditated attack to break this guy off on his own, completely bury him and embarrass him before letting him go. That's what this feels like to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like one of those things. Like he was with Imperium for so long. Like maybe there was some conflict there. I mean, that's the only thing I could really think of. Like besides that, why else would you split them off? Um, yeah, I would have to. I would assume that's what. Like if Gunther and them were really fighting for him, I don't think that would have happened. Just that maybe there's some conflict between them. I mean, Gunther was champion at the time, so like I would say he had some decent say. So I would assume there had been something there because I doubt he just let his guy who he's been with for years just get fucking railroaded.
Yeah, and just one of them too. It wasn't like he even split off from Kaiser as well. It was just Vinci. They kicked Vinci out of the group, which is fine because I think Vinci on his own, he's a very good wrestler. We don't really know how that Italian stallion gimmick would have really gone because we barely got to see it before they canned it and they didn't really go back to it. But I think he deserved a shot, though. I thought those videos were cool, and I'm like, okay, this has potential. It's kind of like what he was doing in NXT, but a little bit better. And I thought the entrance was cool. He looked like a star. And then they immediately fucking buried him. I will never get over that. I'm like, they absolutely something must have happened. I don't know whose coffee he pissed in, but he did something to make someone behind the scenes angry because they just fucking. You talk about burials. We don't really talk about burials because we do not use that word lightly. But he was absolutely fucking buried. Wrestling Fan 13. It's a tough balancing act to do because you have to have a business mindset, but these are human beings at the end of the day who need to make a living. I don't envy people who make these decisions. No, I agree. They also had said, I hope Cedric and Mustafa Ali run it back in TNA Heart versus Soul. Yeah, they had a great Mania match many years ago, so I would love to see that match again in TNA. But I think Cedric might be headed to AEW. As long as the Big Swole departure doesn't really ruin his chances of going there, because he may not want to go there because Big Swole, his wife, didn't have a very amicable departure from that company. Other than that, I would love to see him there with the Hurt Business, or the Hurt Syndicate, rather. He had also said, again, take it with a grain of salt, but I heard a story that Gio potentially had heat. Again, it's strictly a story I saw floating around. And Nick also said Gio leaving and coming back to lose was terrible. No, I agree. Yeah, that story that's going around, I mean, it's nothing incredibly inappropriate, so I'll just say it here. The rumor that was going around, and I don't know if I believe it necessarily, because I think it is bullshit, was that I believe he tried to steal Kaiser's girl, that being Tiffany Stratton, from Kaiser, and there might be some sort of heat there, because someone had also told me, and again, take this with a grain of salt, this is all high school bullshit, but I don't think Gunther and Kaiser were following Vinci on social media after that. So, again, I mean, they don't really keep kayfabe with that sort of stuff. I feel like they would probably still be following them if that wasn't the case. But do you put any stock into rumors like that, or do you think it might be just some other reason entirely?
I feel like I said, I mean, Gunther was champion at the time. I mean, if there's something like that, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, I feel like if it was anything else, I feel like they would defend him. If something like that, like trying to steal your friend's girlfriend, I mean, like I said, it had to been something that they didn't defend him in. So, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll find out the real story. Maybe not the entire story, but maybe his side of the story at some point. Because if he did do that, he's not going to say, oh, yeah, I did that, and that's why I got fired. Like, he's not going to fucking say that. Maybe at some point he'll give his side of the story. Isla Dawn, Elektra Lopez, I kind of put in the same category. Two fine talents. I really like Lopez in Legado del Fantasma, but they didn't really do much with her, so I could see they probably saw her as expendable, which is why they got rid of her. They don't need her, but I thought she was a nice addition to that act. And then Isla Dawn, it does give me hope they might do something with Alba Fire on her own. Otherwise, why would you keep Alba Fire and then let go of Isla Dawn? But I also worry that she'll continue to get lost in the shuffle. But I know you talked a little bit about them briefly, but thoughts on Lopez and Dawn departing WWE?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of put it perfectly. They're both in the same category for me as well. I feel like they both were like okay in the ring. Lopez, I mean, even in NXT, I feel like she wasn't great. Dawn was like passable, but on her own, I would never see her as like a singles wrestler. Same with Lopez, honestly. I feel like she was good in her role as like a manager or like valet for Legado del Fantasma, but with Dawn, I saw her strictly as a tag team person. I mean, for me, I was not that I was like hoping she got released, but now that she has been released, I'm hopeful that they'll now kind of push Fire as a single now, because now she won't be kind of like pigeonholed to the tag team division. But I mean, I think for Dawn specifically, she was just kind of a tag team person. Lopez was good as a manager valet, but as an in-ring wrestler, I never saw it there.
Do you think, in the case of Lopez and Dawn, or I guess Lopez, I agree on both completely. Do you think the infamous match that we've talked about before between Lopez and B-Fab kind of did her in as far as the in-ring stuff goes? She did improve, but remember the infamous match between Lopez and B-Fab from a few years ago in NXT?
Yeah, was it like a street fight? I don't know. It was terrible.
Yeah,
Whatever it was.
it was not good. BFAB they're still utilizing and trying with, which I appreciate, but Lopez did not get that same treatment. Last one for you here, Mr. Marceau. Duke Hudson, like I said, was let go in January. It's just coming out in the last week. I think Fightful reported about a week ago. Not too shocking. Chase U was disbanded about 3-4 months ago, I think, and they have not been on the show since. Andre Chase has been on the show, but the rest of them have not been. But I was still surprised to see his name on that cut list. He's been there for a long time. They did try with him very briefly in the early COVID days on Raw when they were just throwing shit on the wall to see what worked. They put him with fucking MVP, and then they put him back in NXT, and he was off the show for a while. I think he was a talented dude. I liked that video that he put out, talking to himself, kind of talking about the release and whatnot. I thought that was really well done. Were you a Duke Hudson guy at all? Do you see any potential in this guy in WWE beyond the Chase U shit, or do you think that was the ceiling for him in WWE?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think he was decent. Obviously, he was on the main roster before, and then he moved back down to NXT and kind of had his own thing. He got his footing, obviously, with the Chase U stuff. But even on his own, I never really thought he was like that. I would say he was pretty average. I mean, I think the Chase U stuff kind of propped him up a little bit, but when I saw that on the list, I wasn't totally surprised just because he was on the main roster. I don't know. I didn't see him past a certain level with the Chase U stuff, and on the main roster, I could see him kind of like, not the same thing, but like kind of like Blair Davenport would get called up and then be released like 6 months later. So
Yeah.
I think he was decent with the Chase U stuff, but I just never saw anything on his own.
I mean, I don't know if it's accurate to say this, but do you feel like Wade Barrett was a similar... I always looked at him as like a Wade Barrett type guy. Wade Barrett was better, maybe in the ring, probably better in the mic, but like he kind of fit that mold of what WWE, or rather Vince, would have looked at once upon a time and probably pushed on the main roster. But I just don't really feel like there's an open... Like, there's no need for a guy like him currently on the main roster where I feel like, oh, they really need someone like a Duke Hudson that could really be pushed. I feel like that was kind of a ceiling. When Vince wasn't there, I feel like they probably weren't going to call him up, although I do think he deserved a shot.
Yeah, he is good size, but, I mean, like you said, I don't think I see him anywhere on the main roster right now.
Yeah, I don't really think there was an open spot for him. There were some AEW releases as well, and, Vengeance Day coming up this weekend. Do you have some more time, Mr. Marceau, or should I let you go now?
I got like 5-10 minutes.
All right. We'll go through some predictions. What would you rather talk about before I let you go? Vengeance Day predictions or the AEW releases?
We can go through the AEW releases. I think that's more exciting.
All right, perfect. All right, I'll get to the chat questions after Mr. Marceau takes off, so I don't want to waste any more time here. But I appreciate you guys sending in the questions. I'll get to them after Mr. Marceau takes off. But AEW releases Malakai Black, Ricky Starks, Miro, reportedly all gone from AEW. Getting their releases, all free men, as we saw with Ricky Starks showing up on Tuesday night's NXT. We've talked about these guys before and them probably being on their way out, but for whatever reason, Tony Khan woke up on Tuesday and said, or Monday rather, and said, hey, I'm going to let these guys go. Ray Phoenix was not among them. Reportedly, they considered it. He was not, for whatever reason. He's still stuck in Guantanamo Bay or whatever people fucking call it, but at least they let go of these three, and Ricky Starks immediately capitalized and showed up in NXT. So, we don't have to go through these individually, but I want to get your thoughts, Mr. Marceau, as well as the fact that Starks is now WWE bound.
Yeah, I was stunned when I saw it that they finally were released, which was nice to see. I mean, poor Phoenix. What did he do? I mean, let the guy go, for Christ's sakes. But yeah, I was pretty surprised when I saw this. I mean, I think Starks, if I had to rank them in order, I'd probably say Black, Starks, then Miro. I mean, I think Malakai or Alice or whatever you want to call him, he probably has the most potential. I feel like if he went back to WWE, to kind of be like a mid to upper tier. I like Ricky Starks. I just have like a fear, even though it's not Vince. I just feel like his size kind of, like, it's not that he's not a small guy in the sense, but like, I don't know, like he's not like, it's not like WWE's the land of the giants right now, but I would say most of the people are bigger, so that does scare me a little bit. And with Miro, I mean, I'd be fine if he didn't come back, but I mean, I could see them also bringing him back as well. But Starks on NXT, I thought that was a great little moment. The way that they did it, like he kind of just like popped out of the crowd after that segment they had with Trick and the ring announcer. So, I mean, it's nice to see him in NXT. I think it's a good start, get him kind of used to what's going on. I think the NXT, the men's division really needs someone like him, like another star. They're kind of depleted right now with like big time stars in NXT. So putting in NXT, I think makes sense. But with like Black, I'd bring him right to the main roster.
Well, as Alexis brought up in the chat, that was my next question for you, Mr. Marceau. Are you scared they might change his name? He never once called himself Ricky Starks. They never referred to him as Ricky Starks. Even on the website, they didn't call him that. But I feel like it might just be a legal thing where it came together so quickly that they didn't even have time to kind of legally go through like, all right, am I going to keep my name or am I not going to have my name? I'm hoping that's what this is and they don't fucking change the name. If Ethan Page could be Ethan Page, I don't see why Ricky Starks can be any or should be any different.
Yeah, I would just keep his name.
I mean, his name is it's established, so why not? But I agree with you on the size thing. I don't really think he might. I don't think he was going to go to the main roster right away and become a world champion. So I mean, I'm kind of worried for his future on the main roster. Eventually, hopefully, Triple H, sees through that and pushes him regardless because of his talent. But I mean, kind of going off that, I feel like you kind of implied it there. Going to NXT first was probably the right call for a guy like Ricky Starks, right? I mean, I know the report was, oh yeah, the creative in NXT is fluid right now, so we can't introduce him whereas in the main roster it's kind of locked in going into WrestleMania, which may not be entirely accurate, by the way. They're constantly changing the card. People get hurt. It could happen. But I feel like Ricky Starks, since he wasn't previously in WWE and he's not like a Kenny Omega, I feel like going to NXT first makes the most sense.
Yeah, they just, like I said, I think they just need him. I mean,
yeah.
Besides like Trick, like I said, Ethan Page, Tony D'Angelo, like Sean Spears, like they don't really have a ton of like over guys to begin with right now. Like I feel like they kind of got depleted. So I think putting him on NXT is good, just to give him like another name, to kind of just put in the main event scene. And I think to kind of get used to it. Like he's not an ex WWE guy, so like obviously some people might know of him, but like not like Black. Like people kind of know who he is already. He was in WWE prior, so. I would put him in NXT first. I think they kind of need him right now. Get him flourishing a little bit, get him used to it a little bit, and then when the time's right, call him up. But like I said, I would call Black up right away.
Dylan brought up in the chat, and I'll go back to the chat in a moment after we let go of Mr. Marceau, but he had brought up that WWE just trademarked a whole bunch of names, and it does make me worried that WWE might give him one of these names. Last thing for you here, Mr. Marceau. Of these names, I need to know what you think might they give to Ricky Starks. Harley Riggins, Aria Bennett, Braxton Cole, Mason Holiday, Summer Sorrell, Hayes, Mays, Jameson, Tate Wilder, Dax, Jax, Presley. I mean, the document gets cut off, so it's kind of hard to say. Osiris Griffin. I feel like I'm watching that fucking bit from, Key and Peele, where they just go through the football names. I feel like that's what this is. Draco Knox, Trill London, and Chantel Monroe. I'm very worried Ricky Starks might end up with one of those names.
The one that was Wilder, I could say it. I think it was like Tate Wilder. What was it?
Yeah, I think it's Tate Wilder. Like I said, it's cut off.
That's new Tate, Ricky Starks. Sounds good. Tate Wilder.
Jordan Gray said she'll take Trill London, so I mean, there you go. That's her new name.
There you go.
Those names are fucking awful. Well, Mr. Marceau, it was great chatting with you. I'll stick around to do some Vengeance Day predictions, but we'll pick up next week. We'll talk about Vengeance Day, everything else on the road to WrestleMania. Have a great day, brother. Thanks so much for coming on as always. I appreciate it.
Later, man.
All right, boss. Take care. Bye. All right, guys, we're going to continue along here with some Vengeance Day predictions and also go back to the chat. Always great to chat with Mr. Marceau here on the show. He was on the road, which is why we had the early start time, Rusty Rages. First of all, thank you for joining us, but that was why we did start early. Mr. Marceau was on the road, so that's why you should always be, hit the bell button to be notified every time we go live to know if we go live at 8:30 on a Thursday. It might be 11, a.m. Eastern time. It might be noon Eastern time on a Thursday. You never quite know when we go live here with WrestleRant Radio. The start time has changed a few different times in the last couple of weeks, so be sure to hit the bell button to be notified every single time we go live here on the channel. He had also said, did you see the Nixon Newell Tegan Knox sign in the AEW crowd last night? I did. I did see that sign. I would love to see Tegan Nox in AEW. I feel like she would probably get lost in the shuffle if that's what happened so far with Deonna Purrazzo. I feel like Tegan Nox, Nixon Noel would be no different. Honestly, I feel like the perfect place for Tegan Nox, and I'm kind of shocked she didn't go there the last time she got fired, was TNA. And again, I know TNA works with WWE, so people might be kind of hesitant to work with TNA because they want to stick it to fucking WWE or whatever. But I feel like Tegan Nox and TNA in that Knockouts division, she'd be the perfect fit for that group. Like to hold that Knockouts title, I could see it. Wrestling Fan 13 said about Isla Dawn, I love that they gave Isla and Alba their moment in Scotland. Yeah, I'm glad they got that moment. They only won the belt. I mean, I'm not going to say it was the only reason, but I feel like a lot of people would agree the biggest reason as to why they gave them those titles on that show was to give the Scotland natives a win, because Drew lost and Piper Niven lost. A great moment regardless. I mean, they were doing shit on TV prior to that point, but they probably gave them that moment for that reason alone. Nick had said, why do they have tag teams to just release one and then put the remaining talent with someone else? Example, Candice, she does nothing with Tiffany, the Nia Tiffany storyline. I feel like they wanted to give Nia like a henchman or a henchwoman or whatever as part of that storyline. And Indy, they had Candice and Indy as a team, but they wanted to give Nia like a henchwoman, and Tiffany broke off on her own. So when Tiffany broke off on her own, Candice kind of replaced Tiffany in the role that she had in that story, which at which point they had no plans for Indy to utilize her on her own, so they let go of her. So Nick had also said, why not split the tag team and keep them separate? I mean, so could you have split up Candice and Indy and then just utilize them separately? Yeah, but I don't think Indy... Love Indy. I don't know if they would have ever utilized her on her own. Should they have? Yes. Were they going to? No. Isla Dawn, and I'm honestly not even all that optimistic about Alba Fire. I know we just talked about her, but just because Isla Dawn got cut, it still doesn't make me think, oh yeah, they're going to push Alba Fire. She's definitely going to be in the championship picture. How many times have we seen where they break up a team for no reason? I mean, a lot of these teams, who gives a shit about? But, they'll break up a team, and then it's like, oh, that means they got big plans for one of them, and then neither of them really go on to do anything, and then they both get fired in the end anyway. That could be the case with Alba Fire. I really fucking hope not. I hope this doesn't mean that she is on main event for the next 6 months and then gets fired in April. I mean, that's not 6 months from now, but you understand my point. I hope that's not the case. And they actually do utilize her, because I feel like Alba Fire on her own and like the women's IC title picture is like the perfect place for her and the best way to utilize her. Wrestling Fan 13 said Duke's release was the most mind-boggling to me. He had everything that I thought WWE looks for as a WWE superstar. Great look, strong in-ring ability, and he was solid on the microphone. I thought he was a good overall talent. I could see what Mr. Marceau is saying, though, as far as him being an average all around on the mic. I agree. He was kind of average in the ring. I can't tell you a great Duke Hudson match that I saw, to my knowledge. But I thought he was entertaining. It's just that they have a lot of people on the roster. The depth, this is the problem that you really run into, where you have this roster depth. You're bringing in people like Ricky Starks and Penta. You can't hoard everyone. Not everyone's going to smell television time. You got to let go of someone at some point. And those people just got the axe. So it's just the nature of the business. When you bring other people up, call people up, or bring people in, you got to let go of some people. You can't just have a roster of 1,000 people unless your name is fucking Tony Khan and the company's name is AEW. Aside from that, you can't have everyone on the roster. You got to let go of some people at some point. Because otherwise, what are they just... I mean, for them, they're just sitting there collecting a paycheck, which is nice, I suppose. But if they're not on the show being used or wrestling, then it's not doing their stock any good. Wrestling Fan 13 had also said, honestly, this is the weakest NXT PLE card I've seen in a while. That's just a testament to how strong previous cards have been. I'm still going to watch the show, but nothing is can't miss to me. I agree. We'll get into the card in a moment after we run through these comments in the chat. But the Vengeance Day card is not strong on paper. I'm looking forward to the NXT Women's Championship match. I think adding Cora Jade was incredibly unnecessary. That really did not need to happen. But the match should still be good. I would headline with that. Obafemi versus Grayson Waller versus Austin Theory. Who could honestly give two fucks? I mean, we know Theory and Waller are not winning the belt. Obafemi just became champion. And it's not a handicap match. It's a triple threat. They're not going to win the belt. This is just an excuse to extend Femi's reign, which is good, but they want to get to Femi and Williams at WrestleMania weekend. So that's what we end up with. Williams and Thorpe, Trick Williams and Eddie Thorpe in a strap match. I don't really care about Eddie Thorpe, but it makes sense, I suppose. Stephanie Vacquier and Fallon Henley for the NXT Women's North American Championship, I think will be good. The tag team match, Josh Briggs and Inamura, I believe from Pro Wrestling Noah, right? Isn't that where he's from? Challenging Fraxium. I'm kind of going into my predictions now, but we'll get into it officially in a moment because I'm going to clip it and put it on the channel tomorrow. That was a random match. Briggs and Inamura just won the belts or became number one contenders rather the other day. So they're like, all right, you get a title shot. I guess. I guess that's how it works. But yeah, not exactly a must-see show on Saturday. I'm going to be watching for that NXT Women's Championship match and to see if they do anything at all with Ricky Starks. He might just be in the crowd, but Ricky Starks, after the appearance he made on NXT on Tuesday, if only to find out what his fucking name is going to be. I have to watch that show. I'm just going to watch it regardless, but I'm looking forward to the show to see, what they do with him, and what role he has on the show. Let's see. Dylan had also said, Ricky Starks reminds me a lot of LA Knight. Did you see all the names WWE applied trademarks for? The trademarks, yes, I did see that. I just read them off because I saw your comments, so thank you for that. Ricky Starks is very much like LA Knight. Not just to you, Dylan, but just in general to anyone listening. The early days of NWA Power, late 2019 NWA Power with Ricky, it was the roster was amazing. First of all, it was probably the best wrestling show on TV at that point. It wasn't on television. It was on fucking YouTube. But they had LA Knight. They had Ricky Starks. But they also had, this is a who's fucking who on this roster, okay? So they had Ricky Starks there, LA Knight, Eli Drake at the time. Nick Aldis was their world champion. Tim Storm, you may not know who he is, very good babyface at the time. Colt Cabana was on the roster. You had the Rock and Roll Express, one of the greatest tag teams of all time, even had a run as the NWA World Tag Team Champions back then. Tom Latimer, who's there still now as the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. You had Thunder Rosa on the roster. Melina. James Storm was there at that point. Aaron Stevens, the former Damian Sandow. A whole lot of people. Wade Barrett was on commentary. You had Colt Cabana. I don't think it was on commentary. He was strictly an in-ring performer, but Jim Cornette was there on commentary there for a little while. It was great. Early NWA Power was just awesome. They added Marty Scurll, who ended up being, problematic, but early on when they had him join, it was very cool. I think Brody King was also there for a little bit, so yeah, those early NWA days were fucking great, man. Camille, who's now in AEW, was also there. She had a very good run. Allison Kay, among other people. So yeah, those early NWA days, which is where Starks and Knight and all this came from. Excellent. Mr. Anderson, the former Mr. Kennedy, also on that roster. It's a good time. Well, Alexis said also about Ricky Starks' name, but if they did change his name, is Ricky Star 2 on the name? It just sounds like it's incomplete. Can you call him Ricky Starks, but just change the lettering? Like, give him a Z instead of an S? I don't know, but Ricky Star isn't bad. Honestly, even if they call him Ozias Griffin or whatever the fuck I just said earlier, we'll get over it. Honestly, it's not going to be that big of a deal. We'll just get over it. So, Ricky Star would be fine, though. I guess they could do far worse. Wrestling Fan 13 said, I heard a story from either PW Insider or Fightful that the deal came together so quickly that they did not have merch lined up or Ricky right away. So I think he'll keep his name. All of them, I would go with Mason Holiday. I think Mason Holiday is a great fucking name. I know Richard Holiday kind of has the Holiday name locked down right now, but you know what I thought always was a great wrestling name? I think this is a name of an old cowboy or something. I think this is an actual name that was used for back in the day that someone actually had this name. Doc Holliday. I know Luke Gallows is Doc Gallows on the, outside of WWE, but I feel like Doc Holliday, there's probably a trademarking thing with it because I think it's someone's name in real life from many years ago, but I always thought Doc Holliday was a great fucking name for a wrestler that I think I used for E-Fed, my own wrestling promotion back in the day. I think I used that name because I just thought it was so great. Doc Holliday. But anyway, as far as what you said about Ricky Starks, I do feel like that was hopefully the case. I'm not saying it is the case, but it does make me somewhat optimistic that they're going to keep his name. It just came together so quickly they didn't have a chance to kind of run it through legal, which is why they didn't do it. But hopefully that's what ends up happening. Alexa said, what are we going to call the Discord? WrestleRant Discord. If we do a Discord, which I know I put up on the YouTube community page, a lot of you guys would like to see a Discord. That would be fun. Hopefully at some point we can put that together for you guys to kind of chat with us during the wrestling shows, and I could put up the links to these videos, ask you guys questions and bullshit like that. I don't know what we would call it, probably just WrestleRant Discord, but yeah, maybe at some point we can get that going. I've heard some positive feedback on that in recent days. Wrestling Fan 13 said AEW has been on a hot streak with their weekly programming for the last few weeks. I thought Dynamite last week was good. I have not watched Dynamite from last night yet. I'll give you Grand Slam predictions too. Fuck it, why not? I will be watching the show on Saturday, their Australia show. So I'll give you some predictions for that before we head on out here in a little bit. Dylan said episode 4 of Invincible was great. The releases were justified because, like you said, GSM, they were sitting collecting paychecks. Only two that they should have kept were Gio and Blair. Wasn't Ricky in WWE before as a jobber. He was not in WWE. They utilized him as a jobber, but that's what they do with extras. So he wasn't like under contract. He was just there. They utilized him. I know you're probably talking about like the Ryback clip where Ryback bullied him backstage. That was back in 2013. They probably used him in the ring as well for a couple jobs and whatnot. But he was just an extra. He wasn't actually signed with them at that point. The Young Bucks actually infamously have appeared on WWE television before. Not under any sort of deal, but they were on SmackDown, I think, being fed to the Big Show back in 2008. Very early on in their careers. Alexis said, what about the bus driver's name from Disney when we were on vacation last year? What was his name? Alexis, I know you're trying to pop me. I don't remember his name. Please inform me. Either text it to me if it's not appropriate or put it in the chat. I don't know. I don't remember the name. If you told me, I would probably remember. Wrestling Fan 13 said, seeing as the Elimination Chamber is in 2 weeks from Saturday, if you had to rank every installment from worst to best, what would be your ranking, Graham? My favorite ECPLE is the 2023 for Montreal. I'm not going to rank every Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. The funny thing about that is that I was considering doing that for WrestleRant Ranks, for an episode of WrestleRant Ranks coming up in the next few weeks. But then I'm like, I looked at the posters, and I looked at like the cards for each of those shows, and I'm like, dude, a lot of these shows blend together, and I've watched every Elimination Chamber probably multiple times, like every pay-per-view, not just the matches. The pay-per-views dating back to 2010. It was just like one of those things where I'm like, I couldn't tell you if this show is better than that one. They all just blend together for me. But I will say the best Elimination Chamber pay-per-view they've done was the 2023 one, by far. I was at that one because I'm biased. Mr. Marceau was also there, one of the best, if not the best wrestling trip we have ever taken. 2 years ago this coming weekend, we loved Montreal. We loved the show. The overall weekend was amazing. We have very fond memories of Elimination Chamber Montreal that we'll probably reminisce on in a couple of weeks when we do chamber predictions here on the show in 2 weeks. So that was the best one. I thought Chamber last year was good. It was a very predictable show in Australia, but it was a good show probably in the middle. The 2022 Chamber show was one of the better Saudi shows they had done up to that point. The overall show wasn't amazing, but it was better than the other Saudi shows. 2021 was during COVID, so there were no fans, so it was a fine show, but no fans. It has no replay value to me. The 2020 Elimination Chamber show was just nothing. I remember that being like a very forgettable show right before COVID hit. 2019 was forgettable. 2018 Chamber was mid. 2017 Chamber, probably one of the better ones, honestly. Probably second best. That one had one of the best Elimination Chambers of all time. Now, I think the 8-year anniversary of that show was the other day, actually, when Bray Wyatt, or was yesterday, I think. It was when Bray Wyatt won the WWE Championship inside the Chamber. One of the best Chambers they've ever done. One of the best overall Chamber pay-per-views they've ever done. Chamber 2016, I don't think they did one in 2016. 2015 was not an overall great show. It was only good for Owens and Cena and Moxley or Ambrose and Rollins. 2014 Chamber was fine, forgettable. 2013 Chamber, I remember being a pretty good show. 2011 Chamber was also great. 2012 was mid to not good. And 2010 was mid. So a lot of mid shows, but I feel like the best ones were 2011, 2011, 2017, and 2023 were the best Elimination Chamber pay-per-views to me. Yo-Yo said, thank you for joining us, by the way. I hope you're doing well. They said, how would you book Ricky's NXT run and possibly into the main roster? honestly, I would not book it all that differently from Ethan Page's. I would give him the NXT North American Championship. I don't think he's going to ever beat Obafemi for the NXT Championship, so probably no on that. I don't know who's going to beat Obafemi for that belt, but I don't think it's going to be Ricky Starks. It would be cool, but I don't really see that happening. I could see him winning the North American title right away, though, from Tony D'Angelo, like over WrestleMania weekend. The men's scene on NXT is so depleted that honestly I would have no issue with Ricky running right through Tony D'Angelo and winning that championship. So that's probably what I would do with him. Overall, though, like on the main roster, it's impossible to say. I mean, I would keep him in NXT for 6 months to a year, probably closer to a year. Not because he really needs it, but he can kind of establish his character, get the WWE audience familiar with his work, grow a little bit, develop. Like the same way I thought Ethan Page was perfect going to NXT first before he went to Raw or SmackDown. I put Ricky Starks in that same boat. I think Ricky Starks on NXT first makes the most sense. We said that I literally said that on hashtag AskGSM on Tuesday. I did not say he would show up on NXT that night, which is exactly what happened. I wasn't accurate on that, but I did say he should go to NXT first. And I'm glad he did, because I feel like that's probably the best spot for him right out of the gate. Let's see. But yeah, as far as on the main roster, I feel like Ricky's probably a good mid-card guy. I don't see Ricky becoming a world champion in WWE. Maybe simply for his size, but maybe he can overcome that. I'm not sure. But he's such a great talker, and he's got charisma out of the fucking wahoo. That I feel like he would be, very good he's perfect for the WWE style. Wrestling Fan 13, Ricky had a few appearances on Main Event. He even wrestled Kane in 2016. I did not know that. Interesting. He must have had a couple of matches as a jobber like many years ago. But I think I remember the Kane match on SmackDown, I believe. Alexis said, I think his first name was Ripley, last name I don't remember. Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about. It was a fucking wrestling name if I've ever heard one. I wish I wrote it down, but the bus driver's name was fucking awesome. We were like, man, that sounds like you're a fucking wrestler. Like, that's such a great name. And then we talked to him after that. I remember that. Dylan said, I've seen most of the Chamber pay-per-views as well, and they were all pretty mid except for 2023 and a couple of others. I agree. The 2023 one was not only the best Chamber pay-per-view they've ever done, it had one of the best chambers they've ever done for the United States Championship. We talked about that on Tuesday on hashtag AskGSM, because someone asked me, what are like the best chamber matches, best and worst? And I said that was one of the best. I forgot about it actually until a couple people in the chat reminded me. Not only did it have one of the best chamber matches for the men, it may have had the best women's chamber they've ever done on that show, but just one of the best B pay-per-views, B-level shows that WWE's ever put together. Between the two chamber matches, Bobby and Brock was probably the most disappointing thing on that show. The non-finish sucked, but the match itself, while it lasted, was fun. You had those matches. Roman and Sammy, obviously, in the main event was amazing. And then you also had Edge and Beth versus Rhea and Finn, which was a really fun intergender tag team match. So, yeah, amazing show. I would love to rewatch that one of these days. So, let's get into the Vengeance Day predictions here in a moment. I'll also talk about Grand Slam Australia coming up on Saturday. Do quick predictions for that. We talked about Miro and Malakai Black and their chances in WWE. I could see Malakai Black absolutely going back. Miro, not so much. I think he might just stay in Bulgaria. I did see the picture he posted with Sheamus the other day, so that must mean he's in the States, unless that was an old picture. But yeah, I would love to see Miro in WWE with the Redeemer character would be cool. I just don't really feel like he's a must pick up for WWE. Malakai Black is. He deserves another shot on the main roster specifically. Miro isn't. It's like take him or leave him. But Malakai Black they should bring back, and Starks is obviously already there. Wrestling Fan 13 said, I honestly see Punk winning the Chamber and cashing in his favor to be involved in a triple threat between Cody and Cena for the championship. Now, how would that make sense? So if Punk wins the Chamber, he would automatically get the title shot at WrestleMania. So why would he need to cash in the favor if he's already in the match? If you mean Cena wins the Chamber and then Punk gets involved in the triple threat by cashing in his favor, I could see that. That would be fucking stupid to me because, first of all, what pull does Paul Heyman have to get him a title shot at WrestleMania? And second of all, it demeans the fact that Cena won the Chamber. I saw the report, Cena, Punk, Cody is a better triple threat than Roman, Rollins, and Punk. I agree with that, but I hate the idea of triple threats in four ways. It's like a get everyone on the card mentality. I fucking hate that. Just do Cena McIntyre or Cena and Logan Paul or Cena and any number of options. Cody and Punk, Rollins and Roman. There you go. I just solved the issue. That's what I would do. So let's get into the Vengeance Day predictions here coming up on Sunday while we talk about, as we talk about NXT and Ricky Starks being on the show. I feel like Ricky Starks probably will make an appearance, most likely in the audience. That's how I see it going down. So here are my full-on match card predictions for Vengeance Day coming up on Saturday night. Trick Williams and Eddie Thorpe in a strap match. I see Williams going over here. Why would you give Eddie Thorpe the win? I feel like they're just keeping Williams busy before he gets his NXT Championship rematch over WrestleMania Stand and Deliver weekend. So Trick Williams wins here. Nathan Frazier and Axiom versus Josh Briggs and I don't want to mispronounce his first name, but Yushiki Inamura. That's definitely how you not pronounce his first name. But I only saw him for the first time in action on Tuesday in like an actual match. I think he may have had one other match in NXT TV in a Battle Royal, but Tuesday was the first time I actually saw him in like a full-on match. And I thought he was good. I think him and Briggs work well together as partners. I don't think they win the belts here. Inamura is a Noah talent, so I don't think they're going to put the belt on a Noah guy. They could. I'd rather see the belts on an TNA team before I would a Noah person. Just because I don't really know the Noah people all that well at all. They also just started teaming and won one fucking match on television, so they should probably win more matches first before they become champs. But what I'm hoping this leads to, I do think Fraxium wins here, by the way. What I'm hoping this leads to, based on that little interaction that TNA posted on their socials the other day, that we get Fraxium and the Hardys in a title for title NXT for TNA Tag Team title match at WrestleMania weekend. I tweeted this yesterday. But if they were to do that match and Ricky Starks is on that show, that Stand and Deliver show, I said to Alexis recently, I'm not going to Stand and Deliver. We didn't go 2 years ago. We didn't go last year. We went 3 years ago in LA. And it was just hectic because they do it the same day as Mania, so you got to go here and there and whatever. At least in Vegas, everything is within walking distance. But I said on Twitter yesterday, if Ricky Starks wrestles on that show, which is basically a guarantee, and they also have that match as well, the title for title match between Fraxium and the Hardys, I am going to that fucking show. Even if it means buying a ticket, I am going to Stand and Deliver. So I think there's a decent chance they might do that match because that's the biggest match they can do right now with Fraxium is Fraxium versus the Hardys. And honestly, if there's any team to give the tag titles to from TNA, it would be the Hardys. Say what you will about them, but they're just still very much over. And I feel like it would be history making. They've never held the NXT tag titles before. I feel like that would be cool. I feel like that's where they might be going. Maybe not, but that's what I would like to see. Javon Evans versus Ethan Page. This little story they've been telling here between the two with the whole I lost my smile thing, and then Ethan Page attacked him pretty viciously, made him bleed, hurt his jaw. Don't know if it was legit, but if it wasn't legit, they did a great job of making you think that it was. This has turned into a great undercard feud. I think Ethan Page wins here. I don't know if I think they stretch it out. I don't think it's over after this, so I would give Ethan Page the win. I could see Javon Evans picking up the upset, but I'll go Ethan Page, and then Javon Evans wins over WrestleMania weekend. Fallon Henley versus Stephanie Vaquer for the NXT Women's North American Championship. I'm going to go Stephanie. New NXT Women's North American Champion. Fallon Henley's been champion now for about 4 months. Hasn't done a hell of a whole lot, but at least she got a title run before inevitably getting called up, or at least I hope, because she's very good. Stephanie's great, though. She's a fucking star. I would give her the championship here. NXT Championship Triple Threat. Obafemi, Austin Theory, and Grayson Waller. I think Obafemi goes over, obviously, retains the NXT North American, or the NXT Championship, rather. He was North American champion for so long, I kind of forget that he's not that champion anymore. But this is just a filler match. It should be a good match. They're going to, again, for the upteenth time, tease tension between Theory and Waller. It won't come to fruition. They've been doing this for what feels like a fucking millennium now. Femi will retain. I just don't really care about this match because we know there's zero chance that Theory or Waller should or will win. But I do think Femi retains. And then finally, the match I think should close this show. Julia, Bayley, and Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade. Forgot about her. It's going to be a fatal four-way, what was originally a triple threat. They are now making a four-way for some random fucking reason. I like Cora Jade, but she has not won enough. I know she beat Bayley on Tuesday. But Cora Jade has not won enough to justify her being involved in this match. The match simply does not need Cora Jade. She could have gotten involved briefly, but she should not be in this match. Regardless, I do think Julia, who just became champion last month, will retain here. I would go off the show with this. I think John Ritland said the other day on hashtag, when was the last time the women, I had asked you guys, when was the last time the women had headlined an NXT PLE? And I think he had said the deadline match actually in December. But if you go back to an NXT Women's Championship match, the last time that headlined an NXT PLE, it would have been Becky and Tiffany and that hardcore Extreme Rules match at NXT No Mercy back in October or September of 2023. I think it was last day of September in 2023. That wasn't that long ago, but I would have the NXT Women headline here. Julia retains. Bayley and Roxanne kind of cancel each other out. I don't think, hot take here, I don't think they have a match at Mania. I think we get Bayley and Roxanne at Stand and Deliver. And that's kind of like Bayley's WrestleMania match. She's had enough Mania moments and matches where she's not at Mania. It's like, oh yeah, it sucks, but at least she's still involved in some form or fashion the night before, or the date that afternoon, I guess, against Roxanne. So it's better than nothing. I don't think there's enough room on the I would make room on the WrestleMania card for Bayley and Roxanne. I just don't see, there's so many other women they don't really have a spot for that they could put in a match instead, whether it be Jade and Naomi or Bianca and Rhea. Chelsea and Lyra are champions now. You can have those belts defended, the tag titles are those getting defended. I don't think they do a non-title match between Bayley and Roxanne at WrestleMania. But you can do it at Stand and Deliver, and that's kind of like the WrestleMania moment. I guess. It's not WrestleMania, but it's the same weekend, I suppose. And you can blow it off there. Maybe with Roxanne going over right before she reports to the main roster full-time. So those are my predictions for Vengeance Day coming up on Sunday. Looking at the chat here, can you see the TNA Championship being defended at either Stand and Deliver or WrestleMania? WrestleMania, no. That was from Wrestling Fan 13, by the way. WrestleMania, no. Stand and Deliver, maybe. Probably not. Like, what would be the point? If they had to fill out the card, then sure. I would rather see the TNA title defended than the fucking, like, Heritage Cup Championship that no one gives a shit about, which, thankfully, Lexis King turned babyface to me when he did away with the whole Heritage Cup rules crap. At that point, what's the point of the Heritage Cup if you're not doing the Heritage Cup rules? But I'm not complaining because that crap sucks. But I would love to see Joe Hendry versus like an NXT talent on that show. Don't know who it would be, but Josh Alexander should be free by this weekend. I think he already is free as of like today. I think today might be the last day of Josh Alexander's contract. So how fucking cool would it be if they could bring in Ricky Starks the day after he got his release from AEW, and Josh Alexander isn't even being released. His contract is just up. So, and the TNA also works with WWE, so I'm positive he probably already talked to them. How cool would it be if, right after Ricky Starks' debut, Josh Alexander also shows up on Saturday in the crowd, and we get Josh Alexander and Ethan Page, or I guess you're not going to do Joe Hendry and Josh Alexander for the TNA Championship, which is where Josh Alexander just came from, so I don't really know why I tied it into that, but Ethan Page and Josh at that show would be great if we don't get Javon Evans and Ethan Page again, so a lot of moving parts right now in NXT that I feel like could and should come to fruition. I'm going to look up the Grand Slam Australia show real quick. Give you my quick predictions for that coming up on Saturday night. It's being filmed on Saturday night in Australia. It would technically Eastern time zone be happening early in the day on Saturday. They're not airing it live though on Max. It's not a pay-per-view. It's a glorified Collision. They're airing it on TNT after the NBA All-Star coverage, I believe, or whatever NBA shit is going up on Saturday night. They're airing it that night after that's over. It could be at 10, it could be 11, it could be midnight. That kind of sucks that we don't have a consistent time, but the lead-in should be big, though, viewers-wise. But anyway, for AEW Grand Slam Australia, before we wind down here are my predictions. Jay White and Cope, stupid name, versus the Death Riders is Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli, Brisbane Brawl. I think Cope and Jay White go over here. I could see Jay White maybe picking up the win. Or Cope, because he is probably challenging for that AEW World Championship at Revolution in a couple of weeks. So I do think Jay White I don't think he's Australia. He's from New Zealand, which is not the same thing. But near his home turf, I could see him going over. Kazuchika Okada versus Buddy Matthews for the AEW Continental Championship should be a banger. Matthews obviously from Australia, previously won gold in Australia in WWE. He won the Cruiserweight Championship in Australia at that Super Showdown show 7 or 8 years ago from Cedric Alexander, who we talked about earlier. I do not think lightning strikes twice here. I do not think Matthews walks out the new Continental Champion. I do think Okada retains the belt. Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega versus the Don Callis families, Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita in a tag team match. I think Ospreay and Omega go over. It would be awesome to see Fletcher go over in his home turf. He is Australian, I believe. They were called Aussie Open for a reason. It would be cool to see him go over by pinning either Omega or Ospreay. I just don't see it. So I'm going to say Ospreay and Omega go over in their first time as a team. Mercedes Moné versus Harley Cameron, who is from Australia. For the AEW TBS Championship, I'm not a big Harley Cameron fan. I'm probably in the minority on that, but I won't doubt that she's over. People love Harley Cameron. She's a big fan favorite for them. I do not think she wins the championship here. I don't think she should. There's a few other women I would rather see with that belt right now than Harley, but maybe because she's become so popular, they pull off a swerve and they actually give her the championship and hand Mercedes Moné her first loss in AEW in the process. I don't see that happening, but it's entirely possible. But I will go with Mercedes Moné. What I do see happening on this show is Timeless Toni Storm walking out the new AEW Women's World Champion. In Australia, again, she's from New Zealand, I believe, so it's not exactly her home turf, but close enough. I could see Mariah May retaining. I think Mariah May's run has been good. It's been kind of like anticlimactic because it kind of always felt like they were waiting for Toni to come back to do this match on this show. But I am looking forward to the match. They've had one of the best feuds in AEW history. Toni Storm, best pickup female-wise in AEW history. The renewal of their rivalry in recent weeks has been great. I have not watched Dynamite yet from Wednesday, so I don't know what they did on Wednesday, if anything. But the segments they've done in recent weeks with Toni going out there in Mariah's gear and the whole reveal of Toni being an act the entire time, the greatest, ruse that Toni Storm has ever pulled off acting-wise, blah, blah, blah. I think that whole thing has been great. And I'm looking forward to the match. I would headline with that, honestly. I don't think Jay White and Cope versus the Death Riders, which probably will main event, is really worth headlining with because there's nothing on the line. It's a no DQ match, cool, but who gives a shit? Regardless of who wins, who cares? Honestly, that feels like a Dynamite match. I would have Mariah May and Timeless Toni Storm headline that show. It's not even a fucking pay-per-view, so it's not like you're closing the show with the women, but close enough. I say Toni Storm walks out in the main event, the new AEW Women's World Champion. And that's about it. Wrestling Fan 13 also chatted and said, are you used to getting, or rather referring to Adam Copeland as just Cope now? I'm still trying to get used to it. No, I'm not used to it. And I'm not used to it because I probably would be by now. But the fucking commentators call him Adam Copeland. So, I write in my reviews Cope because that's technically his in-ring name, but they still call him Adam Copeland. So, I guess Cope was always supposed to be a nickname, but they call him on the website Cope, so it's fucking confusing, dude. Cope should be a nickname, not the name. Adam Copeland being a nickname for Cope is ass backwards. That makes no sense. That is stupid. So, no, I'm not used to it. And maybe at some point I'm sure I will be, but currently, no, I'm not. I still call him Edge, honestly. I still call him Edge. That's still what he is to me. Because other than the name, he's pretty much exactly the same as he was in WWE, which isn't a bad thing. Wrestling Fan 13 also said Harley Cameron has been really entertaining as of late. She has a hell of a singing voice, and I had no idea she did the vocals for the Inspiration's entrance music. I did not know that. The Inspiration were barely in TNA, so, honestly, I kind of forgot what their music even sounded like. But yeah, she does have a great voice, though. She has a great singing voice. She does all of her own songs. She did I think I'm going to put a spell on you song from Hocus Pocus. She did a rendition of that with Scarlett and Shotzi a few years ago before she ended up in AEW. If you haven't seen that, I think WWE actually put it up on their YouTube channel, actually. So Harley Cameron is technically WWE canon, if that video is still up on their YouTube channel. That's going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know we went a lot later here in the post-show, so to speak, post Mr. Marceau than I was expecting. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, sending in the chats. Alexis, Dylan, Nick, Wrestling Fan, Yo-Yo, among other people here from a little bit earlier on. Appreciate you guys. Rusty was here a little bit earlier on as well. Justin, thank you guys so much for sending in the chats. Greatly appreciate it. Schedule going forward, well, we should be back here live on the channel on Saturday, late morning, early afternoon, probably late morning reviewing SmackDown. Depends when I watch the show. Friday is Valentine's Day. Alexis and I have plans, so I will probably not be... I'm definitely not watching SmackDown as it airs, where we're going to see Captain America Brave New World, actually, and going out to eat. So I'm not watching SmackDown as it airs on Friday. I'll probably catch up on it on Saturday morning, and then I'll probably go live with a review sometime late morning, early afternoon on Saturday. So if you love these reviews or love the live streams, be sure to tune back in on Saturday, late, like I said, late morning, early afternoon on Saturday to join us to talk about SmackDown. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, all that stuff, greatly appreciated. But moreover than anything, subscribe if you haven't already, and also hit the Bell button to be notified every single time a new video goes up here on the channel and every single time we go live. You'll be notified whether, like we said earlier, whether we go live first thing on Thursday mornings. Mr. Marceau sometimes has to hit the road early, so that's why we go live here at like 8:30, 8:15 Eastern time. So whether we go live at 8:30 Eastern time AM or around 11 or noon or even 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, which is when I went live when I was in Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago, you will be notified every single time. Sometimes I like to schedule the, streams in advance so you guys know when they're coming. Sometimes I can't. So you can be notified regardless if you hit that bell button, and you can join us to chat about all the different shit that we talk about here on the show, whether it be the Super Bowl and the Daytona 500, which I asked Mr. Marceau about when we kicked off the stream, or Raw on Monday, predictions, AEW stuff, which we don't really talk a whole lot of AEW on here because there really isn't a whole lot to say. But if Grand Slam's a good show, maybe after Mr. Marceau hangs up next week, we could talk a little bit more about that show because I doubt he's going to be watching it. I can give my quick thoughts on that. And also, obviously, all my reviews are also available over at WrestleRant.com in written form as well. Wrestling Fan 13 says, thanks for the stream, Graham. Have a great day. You as well, my man. Thank you for joining in. Thanks. I appreciate all the great chats. Appreciate you joining us, chatting here, and just talking some wrestling and some other shit. So thanks so much for tuning in, as well as the rest of you. One last thing here. We should have a couple of interviews going up here on the channel in the next week that I recorded on Tuesday. We wrapped up Hashtag, and I did 2 interviews on Tuesday, talking the new LFG show on A&E premiering this Sunday. So stay tuned for those interviews here on the channel in the coming week. I think you guys will like them, especially one of them. I think you probably will know which one that is, and you'll find out pretty soon enough here on the channel. I might do like an announcement on the community tab. We'll see. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully the audio was the best that it's been so far. My audio, Mr. Marceau's audio, I'm constantly changing and tweaking to see what works. But I think this week was a good week. And hopefully, next week will be even better. And maybe next time we can get Mr. Marceau on video as well. So as I play the outro here, hopefully it works and the outro doesn't completely, mess up audio-wise. But I think we should be fine. Until next time, guys, have an awesome one. Have a very happy Valentine's Day. I'm Graham G. Matthews. For Mr. Marceau, I'll catch you guys down the road.